So that is kind of the end of this initial introduction about programming for artists. I've been doing lots of drawing. I've been doing some odd explanations and throwing cutlery around and throwing cardboard boxes for variables around and changing the size of glasses to show that if we move from a little glass to a big glass, we just change one variable and our calculations still work. And then if you come back, and I'm just showing off here because I've got lots of glasses in the studio, do another glass, do another glass, do another glass, it all still works. And that is very cool because we can make reusable, flexible structures so that our programs can run differently every time or respond in different ways to whatever the conditions are. Hey, okay, so last time I said that's it. There was no more to know about programming. Actually, that I didn't lie, I just kind of completely forgot. There were two other things that I wanted to talk about, and we're nearly there. We've talked about integers, we've talked about variables, we've talked about floats and strings, we've talked about vectors, about how we can put variables into lists. We've talked about conditional statements to say, if nobody is coming to the barbecue, then stay at home, watch TV, with an if, then, else. And we've also looked at how we can use for loops to count through based upon amounts, and how we can use that to look inside vectors. Now, I've been using these things like say hello, give plate, give a glass, give a fork. But these aren't real commands. But I could turn them into real commands by making them functions. And functions are basically chunks of things that I want to do that I can fold up into a little instruction. Like if I say, make me coffee, actually, let's bring back in my proverbial idiot cousin. I can say to my proverbial idiot cousin, make me coffee. Or let's make it even more generic. Make coffee. And that could be an encapsulation for a list of instructions that I've written down to give to my cousin, saying, let's take this as an example. So, let's make a function, a thing, for making coffee. And what I want to say is, make coffee, and then I'm going to, like I do with loads of other things, put it inside curly brackets. So when I say make coffee, this is the list of things that we're going to do. First is get a cup. I have an espresso machine, so I do all the fancy grounds, but we're just going to say it's instant coffee because that makes things a lot simpler. We're going to get the coffee, we're going to get a cup, we're going to fill kettle with water, boil kettle, put the coffee in the cup, put the water in the cup. So now I've made a function. Just like here when I say give a plate, give a glass, give a fork, I can define what that means and build up my own little bits of Lego programming. So if I want to say make coffee, inside there in smaller bits of program, like Lego building stuff up, I can specify what do you do when you make coffee. Now in programming, there's a bunch of things that you can do with a function. In C++, every function has to return something. Basically it says, I ask my cousin to do something and I need a report at the end of it. Now, commonly, nothing comes back. If I just gave a command, make me some coffee, that's fine. And what I do is, I'm not expecting any response from that. I just want the coffee to happen. So in programming terms, I would say nothing is being said to me about it. So there's a void response. Nothing is being said. Make coffee. And then there's a list of instructions of things to do. But what I could do is actually say, make coffee for 5 people. And then what I'm doing is I'm passing a parameter or an argument. I'm saying, do this thing this many times, or with this information. So I can say, make coffee 5 times. And at the end of it, don't give me any response. Don't give me any feedback. Don't give me any lip. Just go and make coffee 5 times. And in my routine here, where I've defined what make coffee is, I could say make coffee is expecting to get an integer called n, for number of people. And then what I could do is say, in here I could put a loop running out of space, but I could say for repeat the amount of times, and it would do this n times, however many times I've said make coffee past a number. So we can make a list of things of how stuff works, and we can pass the functions parameters. The other thing is that we can simply ask stuff to happen and expect a response. So I could say to my cousin, ask how many people want coffee. There will be a list of instructions. And I wouldn't be passing any parameters, but I'd expect a number back. So let's make a function to do that. I could say, ask coffee. Not going to send it any parameters, like not going to tell him how many people to ask coffee for, but I'm expecting an integer to come back, because I'm not going to get him asking half a friend in the lounge. I'm saying, like, go to the lounge, ask how many people would like coffee, and then come back and tell me. So I'd expect an integer to come back. And what I could do is actually I could concatenate this. I could say, ask how many people want coffee, and then make coffee for that number of people. So one way is I could say integer peeps or coffee. I should really come up with shorter variable names or write more neatly. Peeps want coffee equals ask coffee. We can get this function that we've made called make coffee, and we can pass it integers of how many people we want to make coffee for. We could make another function called ask coffee, which returns us an integer, an amount of people that want coffee. So we could say, make an integer variable called people that want coffee, and then use this here, the ask coffee function that we've defined, to go off and ask people how much coffee they want, and it will return us an integer. And this is the model for it here. And we take that integer that it returns and put it into the variable peeps want coffee, and then we can say make coffee and pass it an argument or a parameter for how many people we want to make coffee for, and use this thing in the variable peeps want coffee, and it will go off and make coffee for us. So we can build these functions, sub-lists that we can give a name to, as sets of instructions and commands, bracketed together to almost form like mini libraries of stuff. So we can say, here's how you make coffee, and this function can receive a number, an integer in this instance, of how many people to make coffee for. And it loops round depending upon how many people it got asked to make coffee for. In our peeps want coffee example, we've said it's now a function that finds out how many people want coffee and returns us an integer. Whereas make coffee, you can see it just makes the coffee for an integer that we pass it, and it returns nothing, it returns void. So that's what that means, void. It's empty, doesn't return anything. And we could get things, functions that get sent strings, get sent objects, get sent floats, and return us strings. So you can say, go and ask somebody's name and give me back a string containing their name. So we can use functions really simply to make little bits of Lego that we can reuse again and again and again in exactly the same way that we were making loops. And inside our functions, they can have loops and conditional statements and so on. So that's a really simple, quick introduction to functions and how you can build up more complicated programs built out of all the bits that we've already learned. Catch us next time. Hit the subscribe button, and if you're interested, drop me comments below. I'd love to find out what you're doing and hear about the things that you're dealing with in learning to program for artists.